Welcome back, friends. It is Micah bringing you a new interview. We've been giving the NITA folks a lot of love lately, and I want to spread that well. And in doing so, bringing you the bearded Biomed, Chace Torres. Going on, everybody? Micah, appreciate you having me on today. We're going to have a good conversation, have a little bit of fun at it. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, my friend, and it was great getting to know a little bit more about you before hopping on here and hitting record. And this is going to be very informal type things, and I just want to kind of do the part of, with the background being that we're here to assist veterans in going into field service engineering, and that's our audience. And so just focusing on you, how did you decide to get into the Army? What made you go into biomedical specific?
So, native Texan, grew up San Antonio, went to college with aspirations that just didn't pan out, had a lot of crappy jobs that just didn't pan out. I finally just begrudgingly decided to join the military. And the only thing I told the recruiter was I want something medical and I want something technical. Because I love to tinker and work on things. And also, I wanted to do something with a purpose. So, I'm glad that he happened to mention 68 Alpha because I'd never heard of it before. You talk to anybody about it, and most people will share the same story. And went ahead and signed up for it. Shipped me off to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. Went through I think it was at the time 56, 58 week program, and went ahead and did a full 8 years of active duty service. Threw a couple deployments in there, a couple of promotions in there. Really just the whole time enjoyed learning biomed and, having the impact on the military side of it. But it ended up getting to the point that I wanted to bring what I thought was knowledge to the civilian sector and realized that I had to relearn a lot of things.
That is awesome. And so do you find that whenever you're working through all that construct, or I guess give us a background of kind of the equipment set you work on, if that makes sense these days?
Sure. So the easiest way I try to explain to people what a biomed works on or their purview on day to day is pretty much anything that is going to be used to treat your illnesses, used for surgeries, used to assess vitals. So anything that treats owies and boo-boos or keeps you from dying.
Fair enough.
Patient monitors, anesthesia units, anything in imaging, which is, CT, MRI, ultrasound. You can get into the sterilization, so the steam bulk sterilizers that they use to sterilize the instruments in the hospital, life-saving equipment such as defibrillators, surgical equipment, electrocautery units, surgical tables, exam lights, hospital beds, wheelchairs, patient lifts, dialysis scales, patient alarms. I've also done med gas, which supplies the O2, nitrous oxide, vacuum, and the facility walls as well. Anything that you will use as a patient to get you out of the hospital, we touch, work on, certify, repair, inspect.
That's wild. Now, do you specifically, or would an individual BMET go out there? Are they typically assigned, like, it sounds like you've worked on a broad spectrum. In entering, like, let's say a 68 Alpha getting out of the Army, well, for one, how much did that background kind of help you get ready for the transition? And then how many pieces of equipment would somebody kind of come into the industry? Or does that vary if you're working in a hospital setting or perhaps with a...
So it can honestly... You have a lot of avenues available to you as a biomed in general, because you can go in-house into a hospital system where you're solely taking care of that hospital and its, auxiliary, clinics and stuff around the area. Or you could be in a field service position like what I do for an independent service organization, to where we take care of dozens, if not hundreds, of different types of medical facilities. So I take care of regional hospitals, ERs, doctors' clinics, veterinary clinics, dialysis centers, surgery centers, critical access care facilities. Anywhere that has medical equipment, a field service technician can touch. You can go and work on mercy ships, which, go out into the third world area and supply medical care for that spectrum. You can go work for an OEM such as GE, Philips, Siemens, just to name a few, and specialize in one particular or two particular modalities. The reason I've worked on so many things is because of the nature of the field service technician. You really become a generalist biomed. You're going to touch a lot of different things. If you think of all the different types of medical equipment out there, all the different types of manufacturers that make that medical equipment, you can possibly see, a dozen, 24 different makes, models of the same type of equipment that does the same thing, just patient monitors. So you kind of just have the opportunity to learn of just a lot of different interfaces. There's no biomed out there that works on absolutely everything. For instance, someone that is specialized in anesthesia typically isn't going to be an imaging technician, just because it takes a lot to be specialized and to be that subject matter expert in a specialty area. You'll typically see like a CT or MRI technician. That's all they do. Sterilization, biomeds typically will move into a specialty area one way or another, or they can go management, which is what I do.
And so can you kind of touch on that too? I noticed in like your LinkedIn that I believe it's health technology management, or HTM. Can you kind of talk to like what that path would look like?
So the HTM moniker kind of started a few years back. I think Amy was a big part of coining that, which, they oversee a lot of our certification body through the ACI accreditation. And the HTM path, healthcare technology management, is more so you can go and pursue your CHTM certification like I did, and it puts you more in the space of managing devices, asset management, personnel management, so monitoring their KPIs for its existence, or financials, budgeting for departments of, their uses for purchasing new equipment, repairing equipment, cost analysis, and then, of course, regulatory compliance, dealing with Joint Commission, with DNV, the CMS bodies that provide accreditation for hospitals so that way they can get their Medicare, Medicaid funding. That's probably too broad a stroke to really narrow down HTM, but that's a big part of like the management side of it, and really what encompasses, the management aspect of it.
Now, is it a certification path? Like I know in I'll use NETA because it's near and dear to my heart right now. Like there's NETA levels 1 through 4, and that's certification in a body that's typically accredited via companies. And you don't necessarily have to go to university or anything like that. Is it like one of those standalone certification paths? Or is it?
We have several certifications in the biomed field in general. The most common one that's known as CBET, which is Certified Biomedical Equipment Technology or Technician. That's just saying I am a certified biomed through, saying I know my craft, and which I decided I'm gonna go ahead and do. Just might as well add another, notch on the belt. Think of like the Army days, like where everybody wanted to go get their Six Sigma. So Amy has certifications. So you got your CBET, you got your CHTM. CHTM has only been around probably within the last 10 years, maybe even less than that. Is written by one of the, I think, the OGs of the field, David Roddenham, and several others, just to kind of give a little bit more complexity and recognition of somebody that's skilled in the craft of management, because it is also its own skill. So you got CBET, you got CHTM, you got CRES, which is radiological equipment specialist. So typically people in the imaging specialty will go after that. And then you also got your CLES, which is your laboratory equipment specialist. So people that are more into the realm of want to deal with CLIA all the time. Those are the 4 primary big certifications that a biomed can go after, but we also dive in and deal a lot with information technology. So we work a lot in hand with the IT department. So it's not uncommon to see biomeds go after an A plus, M plus, S plus certification.
Now, why, if I may interrupt you, why is that? Like, what is the tie in there? Is it due to the networking of equipment, or what's the tie? Okay.
You know, a lot of equipment is pinging through Ethernet cable, like your patient monitors are running through that. So you're making sure that your patient monitor is communicating with your central monitoring system at the nurse station. Some equipment's communicating nowadays through Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, wanting to make sure that for the most part, it's going to be the IT department handling that. But what a lot of people don't also know is that some hospitals out there don't have the funding to have a full-time IT department. So there's many hospitals that take care of that's third-party serviced, and they actually, just do drop-in calls, stuff like that. So it's kind of a realm where IT and Biomed really kind of work together, just because they know the network and frame point of setting up all that stuff, which we wouldn't necessarily have access to, but they don't know the compatibility and understanding how the equipment works. So that's where we just kind of share knowledge and make things work.
I think that's very cool. Now, so I know you came from that 68 Alpha background and were formerly trained on the DoD side. How much of that stuff translated, like your full military training? Because obviously we're talking to some of the folks that get transition. Do you think that it kind of helped you transition out and made it very smooth, or were there still some things to open?
It did and it didn't. So it helped in the fact that a lot of people recognize that the DoD Biomed program, for all of it, for Navy, Air Force, and Army, it's all centralized because anybody in any of those services can go to the Biomed school, which is now located in San Antonio. That course really, I wouldn't be where I am today because it clarified that I knew what I was doing to where I could go and pursue the career. It really set me up to, one, understand troubleshooting. So the way they structure the school is it's set up in blocks, and in each block you're going to learn a particular either specific system, or you're going to learn maybe a generalized area of type of equipment. So like one block might be primarily focused on imaging, one will be focused on sterilization, patient monitors, that kind of stuff. And you really learn the ins and outs because they literally will hand you a giant schematic, have you trace lines, do electrical theory, I think is 2 full blocks of just learning what resistors do, what diodes do, what AND, NOR gates, all that kind of stuff. And then once they give you the fundamentals, they just start stacking you up and building you up and having you troubleshoot larger and larger, more complex systems. One of the final courses, you're troubleshooting a whole rad room, which can be quite complex just because there's many boards that do different things and different systems that manage those things. And then, so after that year course, you're set with the basic fundamentals to be a biomed. And then they shoot you out into the military realm to either get assigned to a field unit or medcom or a hospital. I got stuck at Fort Hood in a field unit the entire time. So literally the first month I got there, I showed up. They're like, "Hey, I hope you, how you feel about deployment? We're leaving in 2 months." So
I'll be laughing because I know where you're coming from. And I do find it very interesting as well. Or maybe perhaps it's a DoD construct and how schools are done. But so I come from an AECF background or advanced electronics computer field, and it seems like everything is very much based and anchored in the troubleshooting, the one-line diagram, schematics, AC/DC theory, logic, and all that. So all that is literally the fundamentals. How much of that do you use theory-wise and troubleshooting as a biomed on the regular?
So nowadays, a lot of those skills do still come in handy, being able to troubleshoot, work backwards, as you will. For instance, I had a piece of equipment today that had absolutely no power, traced it from the cord all the way to the fuses, to the power supply, down to, what was causing it, which was a blown resistor. But the thing was, OEMs have moved the line in the sand in regards to being able to replace individual component level items on a board, just like with everything. Technology has advanced to the point to where most times, like if you're going to have your phone worked on or your car worked on, like you're replacing a full board. You're not, there's not going to be any OEM I know out there that's going to sell you a resistor or sell you the chip specifically for that board. You're just going to replace the board. But those skills and being able to troubleshoot electrically and understand what each individual board inside a device is always going to stick with you, and you can order that board if the OEM sells it to you.
Well, and the other part of that, does that kind of tie into like the whole right to work issues that they're having with some of these things in the biomedical industry at large?
Yes. So right to repair essentially is we just want to be able to work on what we own. So a hospital buys a piece of equipment, something breaks on it, and OEM will not release manufacturer literature, schematics, even a parts list, or if you want to call them for tech support, they're going to charge you extra money just so you can pretty much call in to get a part number and verify that this is what you already know is broken. Or the main thing, in I think in retrospect, just a company, just everything like John Deere and iPhones and all kinds of stuff is planned obsolescence. So there's actual medical devices out there that have built-in timers on certain parts to where it will automatically fail once that timer hits. And then you have to go to them and replace that part. That's the nature of the beast right now.
Now, is there a way ahead in your opinion? Is there legislation or anything that's kind of looking to this trending towards that? Because I can only imagine those costs end up getting passed on to the consumer in the end.
It does. It's just a matter of, do you want to pay uprate or you want to pay time, labor, materials? It's the thing is, the manufacturers, they make their money based off the initial sale of the device, and then they don't necessarily make the money off the PM. Once the device is sold, it goes under contract. They'll have the services, and then once a contract ends, they either want to get you on another one, try to sell you a newer device, or do a contract that's going to cover the labor, time, materials, parts, and stuff to support that device after the warranty ends. And that's where they make the bread and butter. But that's their bottom line. They're not going to release that stranglehold on the industry just because third party companies like mine or in-house programs want to be able to support the equipment that they have.
And I guess we are seeing that as kind of like the general standard for society these days. Everything is kind of moving to that a la carte or software as a service models.
On another part of when you speak of the software issue, there's equipments that are being locked out through service keys. There is actual software upgrades that end up requiring it could possibly brick your device if you do not do them. And some of these, if you can imagine, the cheapest piece of equipment all the way up to a high-end, hundreds of thousands of dollars imaging device. It goes from the bottom all the way up depending on the manufacturer and who you're working with. Some are a little bit more, they'll work with you as opposed to others. You learn those as you get into the field, and that's okay. We got back channels that us Biomeds use, and there's a huge support system all across the landscape. Discord, Facebook, LinkedIn, personal numbers, and there's the senior folks out there that actually worked with the OEM that provide this stuff because they know that their fellow brethren need the help.
That's pretty cool. So at least there's a grassroots effort. Is there anything on the legislative front that you're aware of to kind of try to mediate some of that stuff, or is it even a worthwhile fight?
The last big thing that did occur with Vontae won their lawsuit against I think it was Phillips, and there have been some legislative drives. I think the biggest thing is in regards to moving the buck forward is it's just going to have to come from each individual state. I mean,
Gotcha.
if you think of like California, for instance, whenever they pass some kind of legislation in general, if it's something that makes sense, most states are going to adopt it afterwards, after they go through the gut.
Right.
And I think that holds true for especially this. The FDA has made it quite apparent that they do not want to have any hands whatsoever on terminating, this whole right to repair ordeal been going on for quite a while now.
And how long has it become an issue based on, I'm sure you're well studied on this stuff and I'm not, so obviously I'll tend to you.
There, I, all I am is just a voice box to help keep the conversation going. But I know many of them out there that are, putting their name on the line, that are doing the work every day. To also jump back to, did the Army help me or hinder me in any way in regards to that? It's not so much that let's say you're trained biomed, getting out of the military. The thing that was the biggest shock to me when I got out was the type of, or not the type of equipment. So for folks out there who don't know, a lot of medical devices that are used to service members, overseas or just in general in hospital is really, really old, or is specifically made for the military. You will be surprised going into VA hospitals in general that stuff is probably, I went into my local one in Fort Worth the other day. They're still rocking Pro Packs from time to time. So if you don't know what a Pro Pack is, like, you will never see that in a regular civilian medical facility. So that it was just a little bit of an adjustment, not so much like I was hindered in a way of being able to be a biomed in the civilian sector. It's just things are just the equipment's just different. It's I usually say there's about every 5 to 10 years there's like a cycle of turnover with the OEMs, because they're coming out their new latest model. It doesn't matter how many different models are out there. If you understand what the type of equipment does and understand what it's supposed to do and have your troubleshooting wits about you, it does. That's why I know Biomed can specialize in everything, because the equipment turns over at a minimum every 10 years.
Now, would you say that, like, outside of the BMAT side of the house, like, I know we don't have, like, Patriot missile systems, battery guys that have a lot of the basic troubleshooting abilities in the theory. Do you find that those folks can transition into the biomed hospital pretty well each year? You work with the elite or
I mean, I've heard of all kinds of different individuals moving from their prior MOS or what their job was to going it. A lot of the 68 Alpha Schoolhouse, actually, some of the, like, when you get the prior service guys, a lot of them are coming from, I've seen medics, I've seen, like I said, I don't see a lot of missile systems guys, but I'm guessing that's probably just because they enjoy what they're doing. I think generator mechanics, truck drivers. There's been some radar individuals that transferred to 68 Alpha. I met a couple Seabird folks that went 68 Alpha. Like I said, as long as you're ASVAB, are they still doing ASVAB?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it's still a thing last I checked.
Yeah. You have that option available to you. That means you got the mathematical and all the skills you need to learn that, especially if you love to tinker, troubleshoot, fix things, take things apart.
It's good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's open to you.
Now, if there were somebody that wasn't specifically a 68 Alpha, like, let's say they came from that background of, like, the radar technician that gets out, what would be a civilian pathway? Do they need to go to school for that? Or are there training certification skill bridge, or
going to be the easiest if you get out? So there's a couple different options for you. You can go through the Amy apprenticeship program, which they have linked up with several either ISO companies or manufacturers or in-house programs that basically what they'll do is you sign up for the program, you're going to go through all the setup stuff, and you're going to spend learning the job firsthand every day while also completing your required educational requirements. And by the time of it, you get a certificate, you get your education, and you already have a job, more likely, because those companies that are intern, it's essentially an intern kind of deal.
Gotcha.
But it's paid. And by the end of it, they've already invested all that time into you. You've already gone through the proper education training, and you know the way they expect things. You've already learned their standard. So I met the first guy that completed it at a conference earlier in March, and he said it was probably he didn't say it was like the easiest thing he did, but it was like everything clicked. Like just the way they have it structured, they have it structured correctly. It's not going to impede anybody who decides to go that route. That recently, it's only been around a couple of years now, but I've heard a lot of good things. There's a lot more people going through it.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head, like where people could go? Is it AME.com, or I know that's kind of putting you on the spot there.
Just type in AAMI apprenticeship program. They'll take you to exactly where you learn what you need to do to sign up and go through that route. If you don't want to go through that route, you could go the regular, college curriculum style. There are biomed programs outside of Texas. Texas is probably the heaviest in biomed programs. But if you do not have a biomed program around you in whatever state you might be, you can also go the online route. There are several online programs. The most notable one would be CBET, College of Biomedical Equipment Technicians. They're based out of San Antonio. Their curriculum is completely online. They do Zoom calls. They're even implementing 3D modeling for you to do virtual reality and stuff too for training. That's another option. And then I've even known of some people that just go out and get like a regular electrical instrumentation degree or electrical engineering, and find somebody that's willing to bet on them, and they learn from the ground up, and they've gotten jobs that way too.
Gotcha.
I do interviews all the time. And I've probably done like 30 interviews just this year because we're always looking for people. But the folks that we get interviews for, I mean, they come from so many different backgrounds. I've had people that have done career changes at 40 years old that are getting into biomed. So it's never too late for you to do it. It's just a matter of if you're willing to just put in the work. Typically, let's say you go through the college program, apprenticeship program, whatever. You're going to come in as a Tech 1. There are companies out there that will let you intern as well. And after I'd say about that 2 to 3 year mark, you can probably, if you're just clicking on all cylinders, Tech 2, and then pretty much the bridge is going to be different just depending on the system you're in, because everybody loves to use different monikers for stuff. So Biomed goes by many names as well. We're Biomed, Biomedical Equipment Technician. We're Healthcare Technology Managers. We are Clinical Engineers. We are 68 Alpha. I've heard Medical Equipment Specialists. There's a whole mess of different names out there. But pretty much you have usually 3 levels of biomed, and then you get into either your specialty tech or you get into where you're like the lead tech or management, and then move up from there. I've been doing this, it'll be 15 years coming up here soon. And every day is sometimes a challenge, or it can sometimes be rewarding, and you're constantly having to learn. I learn things all the time just because I'll come across a new piece of equipment I've never touched. Maybe one of my trainees that I work up through, they've gone through the most recent iteration of their Biomed program, and I get to hear what are some new training techniques or just different things that are happening in the industry. There's always change in the medical industry, so it's if you like constantly adapting, learning, just being on your toes, which is what the military puts us on all the time. It can be very rewarding. Very cool.
And we're getting close to the half hour here. So I'll wrap with this specific question. I want to make sure, if you could give your 68 Alpha self a year out from transitioning out of the military, what advice would you give yourself back then to set yourself up for success now?
All right. So I know some of the things I experienced probably aren't as harsh anymore. So one thing I did experience that year out, I mean, for one, my unit pretty much knew I was getting out because I didn't re-enlist. My option was go on another deployment or get out. I was like, I'm good with 2. That year out, I started truly assessing what's my plan, where do I want to go, what are my expectations. So after if you go through the Biomed program in the military, that counts like a college degree. people will recognize it the same. They're damn near equivalent. What I did though before that is I also went ahead and went out and got my associate's in electrical instrumentation just to beef up my resume. I just went through Excelsior College, and so once I did that, I also realized like transition could be difficult just based on because they basically what they do is they put you in like a what they call it, like an exiting kind of program,
Transition assistance program and all that good stuff.
They make you do like mock interviews, how to do a tie and dress correctly, stuff that they act like we don't know how to dress ourselves.
Right.
But one thing I did learn is resume from the military does not necessarily translate into civilian sector. Not
at all.
Have the skills, but because a lot of the folks, unless you were in the military or understand how to interpret the jargon, it's going to be like they're reading a completely different language. So whenever we're doing our like our NCOERs and stuff like that, we love to use percentages and save this much money. We yell these metrics that someone in like an office in an HR, they're not going to know what.
Don't care. It's true. And I can highlight that aspect of it as a recruiter myself, coming from that military background. And like, especially our technical bubbas, right? And the O side as well. It's like, save the Navy $120 billion on 300 deployables and all this good stuff. It's like, all right, guys, you have to put yourself in the shoes of like a human resource individual who has the military, and that's who you need to focus your avatar towards. If you
the 2, 3, 4-page resume is dead, people. It does not exist anymore. A lot of if you got somebody actually looking at your resume, they want it to be a page only. They want to be able to differentiate. Why should I interview you? If you're going through like, is monster.com still a thing?
It is. It's still around.
So if you're going through like those recruiting programs, a lot of it's AI based or is, it's looking for keywords. They used to tell us if you're not sure what to put on there, copy and paste what's on the job summary and then put it in white lettering so you can't see it.
Yeah, don't do that. Not anymore. Yeah, definitely not.
What you want to do is look at that job summary and tailor your resume to reflect it. Not necessarily word for word, but maybe pick out some keywords that, stand out to you and see if your resume will match up with that or make it match up to that. And there's nothing wrong with going to a resume specialist. I know many people, especially in our field, there's folks out there that are 68 Alphas or just biomeds in general. They help people rework their resumes to make sense.
Yep. And I will tell you just a quick insight from the resume or the recruiting side and a piece of advice I give, because we have that similar background of trying to translate, if you will, is to basically go on and not necessarily take the actual job summary, but look a broad spectrum across that entirety of the industry you're looking to go in, and then, highlight the trend analysis there, figure out what is the most applicable and tailor off that. Because what happens is, and I've seen that same advice given, it was given to me when I was getting out. If you do that and tailor it and you don't change the order, like we view resumes, hundreds of resumes a week, and we may not be the smartest dinosaurs on earth here, but you can kind of start picking up on the trends and stuff. And it's like, okay, I wrote that JD and so it's very familiar with me, and I can just kind of tell, going through, it's like, no, he reverse engineered the JD. And so to kind of do that, you can still very much target, but to make sure that you're doing it across the spectrum of jobs so you don't look, inauthentic. So that's the recruiting tip of the day.
Thing I realized is, so most of us should have, unless you're just out vacationing all the time, and I damn near took no time off in the military. When I got out, I had accumulated 70 days of leave. So the more leave you can set up for yourself after you exit is going to stabilize you while you're either looking for a job or while you're starting another job. I planned it to the way to where I had those 70 days off. I had already sent out like 30 or 40 resumes. Out of those 30 or 40, I had 2 interviews. One of them, basically I had 1 interview, never heard from him again. The other one was the only because all those jobs were in Texas. I wanted to stay in Texas. I applied to one in Oklahoma City just because my dad lived here. That was the one that hired me. And I'm glad I went ahead and did that. But what I'm saying is, you're not always going to get a job right on the hand. You need to give yourself a little bit of cushion. So if for some reason I didn't find a job, I'd have that 70 days to still be looking, get myself right. Or if I had to get a part-time job just to handle my financials, I could do so. But the way it worked out is I got the job, I sealed it. I started literally, it was like 3 days after my final exit day from the military. Oh, no, I take that back. I started working before that, and I was getting 2 paychecks for not a couple of months, and it was gravy because it really helped me transition. Because a lot of you folks, let's say if wherever you're based at, you may not want to live there, so you gotta figure, the extra cost of moving, getting your family settled. Like, just give yourself enough bandwidth, plan accordingly. Things aren't always gonna go how you want it to go. And then lastly, the main thing I could probably say is just be willing to kind of just put yourself out there. If you have expectations that are very like, this is what I want, this is the only one I'm going to accept, you're going to have a harder time getting out too. You got to be a little bit flexible. Usually what biomeds are told is the more flexible you are in your expectations, whether where you want to live, what kind of position you want or what you want to do, the better the chance you have of getting a job. So I honestly, I kind of stepped on my own foot because I was very stringent. I only wanted to work in Texas because my family's here. This is what I wanted to do. And luckily it worked out, but it was getting a little scary towards the end there when I applied to 30, 40 different jobs. And at the time I was also NCO. I was running a 15 technician shop. Still didn't matter.
You got to still hustle it, Awesome. Well, dude, I want to just say thank you so much for taking your time to hang out with us and spread some more biomedical knowledge here. We got John Misahuno over on the Veterans of Field Service Engineering Group that pushes the Navy side, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to the Army 68 Alpha side and to get your story. And then where can folks find you? We mentioned you have a podcast, and I want to make sure that you can kind of mention your book as well. He's also written a children's book. So where can we find you and where can they get that?
So if you do not know how to use YouTube, Spotify, Apple, just give a nice little Google search to Bearded Biomed. The algorithm's been pretty pleasant to me. It'll pull you up on just every damn thing I've done. The easiest way to truly just see everything I have going on is visit my website. It's just www.beardedbiomed.com. It gives you latest episodes, a little bit more about me, information. I even got a merch store on there. Like, there's just all kinds of stuff that's always happening on the website. So I just dropped that about a month or so ago. But if you are just audio head, you want to listen to it, anywhere you take your podcast, like I said, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, iHeart, Pandora, Google, it's all on there. You just type in Bearded Biomed, you'll find it. We discuss all kinds of stuff, maybe key issues within the biomed field. I interview a lot of folks that are key figures in the field, talk about maybe just like funny repairs. Like, there's all kinds of stuff we just touch on. And of course you can hit up YouTube, see a little bit more of the actual studio itself, along with maybe some product reviews. I do a lot of maybe like if I'm just feeling a certain way, I'll just go ahead and download something onto YouTube, speak my mind in the car while I'm driving to the next job site. So it just depends. But Bearded Biomed, search it, you'll find it, love it. And that's I appreciate you having me on today. This has been fun.
I've enjoyed the heck out of it, man. And you want to hit us with your outro music as well real quick so we can get that sweet Biomed love?
All right, let's do it. Here it is. Biomed.